All right, so for this prompt, this is about the Constitutional Convention, which was set up to replace the Articles of Confederation after Shays' Rebellion. So remember, some of the causes here included the weakness of the Articles. They lacked the power to tax. Congress was seen as unpopular because they didn't really do anything. So there was people didn't understand like why it even existed. You had some rebellions, like Shays' Rebellion being the key one here. So you had people that were unhappy with the government, or the government was unable to deal these uh, with these revolutions or these rebellions. And then lastly, the economic chaos that was brought about by the Articles of Confederation in terms of economic uncertainty. All the different states were taxing each other's goods. Um, there was there's some question about whether the government could defend people from attacks from Native Americans in the Ohio River Valley. You also had each states having multiple types of money, so kind of made things very uncertain about as to what was happening economically. So all three of these kind of areas resulted in people calling for a constitutional convention or calling for a meeting to try and see if they could fix the Articles of Confederation. Ultimately, however, they decided to throw the Articles of Confederation out and write a new constitution. So what we're going to look at here is the extent to which compromise resulted in an improved U.S. government. Because compromise was important, because remember we talked about regional differences, the North and the South, the Chesapeake, New England, their economies are very different, cultures are very different. There's town and industry in the North, farms and slavery in the South. So these are two places where they need to compromise if they're going to find some kind of solution to this. All right, so let's take a look at what happened as a result of this constitutional convention. So first thing to remember is that slavery was left unresolved. It didn't really touch the issue of slavery very much. And the ways that it did kind of favored the southern states in a lot of ways. Because the South is trying to protect its economy, and if they felt that slavery was going to be threatened, they were going to leave, and that was going to be the end of that. And so the United States would fall apart. So there was an incentive for the people at the convention to make sure the South was happy, or at least could live with the decisions that they made. So they did limit taxes on imported slaves, so because slaves are considered property, so it was considered like a good that you would bring in, even though they're people. But also, and so the trade-off here, the compromise is the South gets this limited taxes on imported slaves, and then the North sort of gets this, that Congress could, after 20 years, if they wanted to, stop the slave trade. Although the South liked that too, because this kicked on the road for another generation. No rights anywhere in the Constitution for even free former slaves or free black people anywhere in America. So they're not even really considered as being part of the country. So slavery as an issue and race as an issue was not really addressed in the Constitution at all, because it was such um, a big issue that the South would have left if they had felt threatened at all by that. All right, so our next area was about the power of the central government. Under the Articles, obviously, the government was very weak. So the Constitution had to try and fix that, but you had to be careful too, because you didn't want to create a situation where there was tyranny either. So there was this debate about how much power states should have. And so they decided that the Constitution was going to be the supreme law of the land, which means that even all states had to follow the law. You couldn't just do whatever you wanted. So it kind of dealt with some of this chaos that we have over here, all the different tariffs and currencies and everything. They also gave Congress the power to tax here, which it didn't previously have. This was part of a proposal of the New Jersey plan, which ultimately didn't pass, but one part of it was that Congress did have the power to tax. They also included this necessary and proper clause, which kind of gave, it's also known as the elastic clause. This gave Congress the power to make laws as they felt that were necessary, that needed to be made for the sake of the country. So all in all, these were kind of compromises over giving power to the national government as opposed to keeping it all from the state. So this is a big change from what the Articles of Confederation were like previously. All right, lastly, we have this idea of kind of the actual form of government. How democratic should the country be? This idea of a republic where people vote on representatives and stuff. So, how much of a voice should you give to the people? And so, one of the arguments against it was that republics had never been done before in a country the size of the United States. So, Madison argues in the Federalist Papers that the size of the United States actually would protect against tyranny because of there'd be so many different groups of people competing for influence that no one group would be able to dominate. So it allows this idea of a republic to exist. And Madison defends that in Federalist number 51. All right. The another area in which they were concerned about was, having a too powerful government. Going back up to this, and so one of the ways they kind of wanted to limit that was by creating the three branches and the checks and balances, that sort of thing, to make sure that one branch wasn't too powerful over the others. But there is a fear of kind of true democracy where you give too much of a voice to the people as well. And so, this idea about how much power should we give to the people? There were some people, not many, there were a few people that wanted to really give people a lot of power in electing officials. But there are also a majority of the people who wrote the Constitution were a little bit afraid of what they called the tyranny of the mob. By the mob, they mean just like the mass of regular people. And so they limited direct election to the House of Representatives in Congress. The Senate, which was the one that was equal representation, was going to be indirectly elected. They'd be chosen by the states. The House of Representatives had shorter terms, only 2 years, as opposed to 6 years for the Senate. So they felt like if they had direct election for the House of Representatives, at least they wouldn't be there very long because the people who made the Constitution didn't really trust kind of regular people to make decisions that much. So all of these things, some of them are more a result of compromise than others, and some are maybe refusing to compromise, like on the issue of slavery, for example. But there was compromise over the power of government and over how democratic the country should be.